Welcome back to the deep dive. So today we are pushing aside the usual tech stacks and productivity hacks to look at something a little more, well, human. We're looking at a specific feeling that I think every single person listening right now is going to recognize instantly. It's that moment of pause. You know the one.
Oh, yeah.
You're standing at the edge of a major decision. Maybe it's a new job offer, a big move, a tough conversation, and you just freeze. You find yourself waiting for every single detail to line up perfectly before you say yes.
It's the universal human craving for a guarantee, right?
Yeah.
We want to see the destination and the parking situation before we even put the key in the ignition.
Exactly. And in a professional setting, we have a lot of very positive buzzwords for that. We call it being strategic. We call it due diligence.
Considered smart business. You don't launch a product without the data.
Right. But the stack of sources we're diving into today argues that while that hesitation might get you a promotion in the boardroom, in the realm of faith, it's actually a crisis.
It is a crisis. And it's one that is, uniquely amplified by the modern world. We're living in an age of big data, of predictive analytics. We are just so used to knowing the outcome before we commit.
And that's the tension.
That is the core tension between our modern obsession with control and this ancient spiritual call for surrender. And at the heart of this entire discussion is a single Hebrew word that's sort of our North Star for this deep dive. Hineni.
Hineni. It's a beautiful word, but I want to get specific about the definition here. The direct translation is just, here I am.
Right, here I am. But context is everything. It's not just about geography.
It's not like checking in on an app.
Exactly. It's not like your boss calls your name in a meeting and you just raise your hand.
Right.
In the biblical narrative, Hineni is described as a covenantal posture.
A covenantal posture. Okay, that sounds significantly heavier than just attendance.
It is. It represents a state of unconditional readiness. It translates more effectively to, I am here, I am listening, and I am ready to do whatever you ask before you even ask it. It's a blank check.
Wow, that is a massive psychological shift. I'm in before I even know what I'm in for. Most of us want to see the terms and conditions first.
We all want to read the fine print, and that's the mission of today's deep dive. We're trying to help you, the listener, unlearn what the source material calls conditional obedience.
Which is that habit of saying, Lord, show me your will, prove to me it's safe, show me the ROI, and then I'll decide.
Exactly. And we want to see what it looks like to replace that with radical availability.
So let's jump into this first segment. The analogy the source uses to explain our modern behavior is just. It's perfect. It compares how we treat God to how an executive treats a consultant.
It's a biting analogy, but it's so accurate. I mean, think about the dynamic. You hire a consultant, they come in, they crunch the numbers, and they present a slide deck.
Yep. Risk assessment, 5-year projection, expected ROI.
And then you, the executive, you sit back, you evaluate the data, and you decide if you want to greenlight the project. You are the ultimate judge of the plan.
You want the risk-free plan, the blueprint. And if the consultant proposes something too risky, you ignore the advice.
Or fire them. And the source argues that our culture has trained us to treat God exactly like that. We go into prayer and say, okay, God, show me the plan for my life. If the metrics look good, if it looks safe and lucrative, then I'll obey.
And that is the definition of conditional obedience.
Yes. And the tricky part is that it masquerades as wisdom. It feels prudent. We tell ourselves we're just being careful. But underneath, it operates on this very strict if-then logic.
If it's safe, then I will go.
When I understand the outcome, then I will follow. And the force argues this turns faith into a contract.
I want to pause on that distinction. Contract versus covenant. Because in modern terms, we use those almost interchangeably.
But theologically, they are worlds apart. A contract is transactional. It's business. I do X, you do Y. If the terms change, I have an exit clause. I can back out.
It's based on performance.
Right. A covenant is relational and binding. It's a commitment to the person, regardless of the circumstances. Hineni is covenantal language. Conditional obedience is contractual language.
It's like we're trying to negotiate terms of service with the Creator. I'll accept your mission, God, provided it doesn't interfere with my weekends.
Which sounds ridiculous when you say it out loud, but we do it subconsciously all the time. This leads to what the source calls the scripture contradiction. Modern logic says, evidence first, then action.
We want the proof before we move.
But Scripture seems to demand readiness over proof.
So we've just got the order of operations completely backward.
Completely backward. And this is the key insight from the text, the thing that really challenges our modern mindset.
Yeah.
Obedience is the vessel through which clarity comes. is not the reward for waiting.
Okay, say that again.
Obedience is the vessel through which clarity comes. We think, I'll wait until I'm clear, then I'll obey. The source says, no, obey. And in the movement, in the actual stepping out, you will find the clarity you're looking for.
That is a tough pill to swallow for anyone who loves their spreadsheets. It's asking you to move forward in the dark, trusting the light will turn on once you take a step.
It does. It requires a total rewiring of how we make decisions. We're addicted to plan trusting, but these sources are pushing us toward person trusting.
Let's look at some examples, because the source material does a great job deconstructing some of the big heroes of the faith to show this. They start with the big one, Abraham.
Abraham is the prototype for Hineni. If you look at his story in Genesis, the call is incredibly vague. He's called to leave his home, his family, his security. But notice the details he's given, or rather, the lack of them.
He isn't given a map.
No map. No Zillow listing. He's just told to go to the land I will show you.
He left without a destination. I mean, that is the definition of a bad travel plan. If I told my family we're moving, but I don't know where, they'd have me committed.
Right. It sounds irrational. And later, it gets even more intense. He's asked to sacrifice Isaac. This is the paradox of the promise. God asked him to give up the very thing that was promised.
Which makes no logical sense.
None. But he trusted God's character when he couldn't understand God's plan. And that is the essence of Hineni.
So then on the flip side, we have Moses. I always think of Moses as this powerhouse leader, but the source calls his story the anatomy of hesitation.
Moses is actually much more relatable to us, I think. Picture the scene. He's at the burning bush, a clear, undeniable divine encounter. And what does Moses do?
He starts negotiating, he pulls out his resume and starts pointing out the gaps. Who am I? I'm not a good speaker.
They won't believe me. Exactly. He asks for signs. He asks for alternatives. He's looking for that consultant's report. He wants the strategy session before he agrees to take the job. He wants to know how it's all going to work.
And notice God's response. He doesn't give him a PowerPoint. He doesn't give him a detailed roadmap for crossing the Red Sea.
No. He gives him one thing, presence. God says, I will be with you. And for Moses, that wasn't enough at first. He kept pushing, but it was all God offered.
So the takeaway there is that the antidote to fear isn't a plan, it's presence.
That's it. We want a plan because a plan gives us control. Presence requires us to trust someone else.
I love that. The antidote to fear isn't a plan, it's presence. Now there's one story in here that really surprised me, Gideon. I grew up hearing about Gideon and the fleece, and it was always taught as this great way to test God's will.
Oh yeah, the put out a fleece method.
Right. But this source takes a sledgehammer to that idea.
It really does correct a major misconception. In Judges 6, Gideon asks for these signs, the dew on the fleece, then the dry ground. We often see that as high faith. But the source frames Gideon's request as just hesitation and fear.
So he wasn't being wise, he was stalling.
He was stalling.
Yeah.
The text implies he already knew what God wanted him to do. The command had been given. He was just terrified because the odds were terrible. God honored the request because he's gracious. But the source notes that the delay slowed down the deliverance. Gideon wasn't displaying Hineni in that moment. He was displaying conditional obedience.
That changes the whole perspective on testing God.
And you contrast that with young Samuel. He hears the voice in the night. He doesn't ask for a job description. He just says, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." That is pure Hineni.
So why is this so hard for us? Why do we default to Gideon instead of Samuel? The source dives into the psychology of control here, and it calls certainty a false idol.
It is an idol. We worship it because it makes us feel safe. Psychologically, human beings have a deep-seated need for predictability to reduce anxiety. Uncertainty feels like a threat to our survival.
It's a safety mechanism, but spiritually it becomes a barrier.
It does. And the source calls this the convenience trap. We tend to measure obedience against our comfort. If God's call threatens our reputation, our bank account, or schedule, we start to negotiate.
We hold out for a better deal. I'll obey, but only if it doesn't wreck my weekend, or I'll speak up, but only if it doesn't make me look weird.
Right. And the source drops a heavy truth here. Blessing often follows obedience, but obedience does not necessarily follow blessing.
We want the blessing first.
We want the confirmation, the funding, the open door, and then we'll obey. It just doesn't work that way. The mechanism is triggered by the step, not the thought of the step.
Which reminds me of Peter on the water. Talk about uncomfortable.
Matthew 14. The storm is raging. It is not a convenient time to take a walk. But Peter steps out of the boat. He didn't wait for the sea to calm down first.
That's the key, isn't it? He didn't say, Jesus, calm the waves, make it look like a placid lake, and then I'll come out.
Exactly. The Hineni moment was stepping onto the waves while they were still crashing. And the insight here is that courage is not the absence of fear.
We think it is. We think I'll do it when I'm not scared anymore.
But courage is action despite fear. Courage is forged in the motion, not before it. If Peter had waited for the fear to go away, he never would have left the boat.
That is powerful. Courage is forged in the motion. So if we're stuck in this plan trusting mode, how do we pivot? How do we actually switch from that to character trusting?
This is the pivot point. It's moving from asking what will happen to asking who is calling me. The source uses Joseph's story to illustrate this perfectly. I mean, think about his life.
Betrayed, sold into slavery, falsely accused, thrown in prison.
Right. If he was looking for a good plan, he would have given up at step one. The plan looked terrible. It looked like a disaster.
If he judged God's faithfulness by his circumstances, he would have lost his faith.
Absolutely. But he survived and thrived by trusting God's character. He trusted in God's sovereignty and goodness even when the evidence suggested otherwise. And eventually he gets to that famous line, God intended it for good.
But he couldn't see that for years.
Years. And that's the theological shift we have to make. Plans change. Plans are often hidden from us. But God's character is immutable. It doesn't change. If you anchor your obedience in the plan, you will crumble. If you anchor it in God's character, you can endure anything.
And the ultimate example of this, of course, brings us to Jesus in Gethsemane.
This is the ultimate Hineni. He knows what's coming. The cross, the pain, the separation, everything in his humanity wants to find another way. He prays, let this cup pass from me.
He asks for an alternative.
He does. But then comes the surrender. Not my will, but yours be done. He trusted the Father even when the immediate path was agonizing. That is the gold standard of radical availability.
It really does put our own hesitations into perspective. When I'm hesitating to volunteer because I'm tired, or to give because I want to buy something new, it seems pretty small in comparison.
It does. But the principle is the same. It's about who is on the throne of your life. Is it your desire for control, or is it God?
So let's bring this down to the pavement. The source talks about a quiet revolution. I love that phrasing. What does that look like practically for us listening today?
A quiet revolution means this isn't necessarily about quitting your job tomorrow and moving across the world, though it could be. It's primarily an internal shift to availability. It's a revolution of the will.
What are some actionable steps? If I want to start living this Hineni life today, what do I actually do?
The source suggests three really practical things. First, the morning affirmation. Before you look at your phone, before you check your email, you start the day by saying, here I am. Use me today according to your will, not mine.
That sets the tone. It's like putting on a uniform before the game.
It is. It primes your brain to look for opportunities to obey. Second is the one step without confirmation. This is a challenge. Identify one area where you've been delaying obedience.
A conversation you need to have, a donation you feel prompted to make.
Something you've been overanalyzing. And you take one tangible step without waiting for a guarantee. Send the email, write the check, schedule the meeting. Just break the paralysis of analysis.
That's scary, but I can see how it breaks the cycle.
It breaks the power of that idol of certainty. And third is incremental obedience. Small yeses build the muscle for big yeses. If you obey in the small things, being kind to a stranger, holding your tongue, you are training your spirit for the big moments.
It's training. You don't run a marathon on day one.
Exactly.
All right.
And finally, don't do it alone. The community aspect is huge. Share your conditional hesitations with a mentor or a friend. Just saying it out loud, I'm scared to do this because I don't know the outcome, strips the fear of some of its power.
I think that vulnerability is key. We all want to look like we have it together, but admitting we're stuck in negotiation mode is the first step out of it.
Absolutely. Because Hineni isn't about being a superhero, it's about being a servant. And a servant doesn't need to know the master's entire strategy. They just need to know the master is good.
So to recap what we've unpacked today, Hineni is a refusal to demand preconditions. It's moving from that transactional I'll obey if to the covenantal here I am.
And realizing that clarity is a result of obedience, not a prerequisite for it.
And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with the final provocation from our source material. And I want you to really sit with this. The question is, where are you negotiating with God right now? What door might open if you acted in obedience without waiting for the full blueprint?
That's the question. Because true faith is not the pursuit of certainty. It is the courageous willingness to be available to God's unfolding work.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll catch you next time.